The Aorus 15 is a new gaming laptop from Gigabyte with some nice specs inside, but just how well does it perform in games? I've benchmarked 17 different games at all setting levels to show you how well it runs and help you decide if it's a laptop you should consider buying. Just quickly before we jump into the benchmark results, I'll cover off the specs in my unit, as I've got the W9 version of the Aorus 15. There's an Intel i7-8750H CPU, NVIDIA RTX 2060 graphics, and 16GB of memory running a dual channel. The Aorus 15 is also available with the X9 configuration, which instead has the more powerful RTX 2070 graphics, so expect better performance with that one. I was running Windows 10 with the latest NVIDIA drivers available, so let's see how well it runs. Battlefield 5 was tested in campaign mode and not in multiplayer mode, as it's easier to consistently reproduce the test run. The purple bars show the results with ray tracing disabled, and the performance is decent here. Even at ultra settings, I found it playable with an 80 FPS average. The green bars show ray tracing enabled, and it was only really playable at medium and low settings. But in my opinion, it both looked and ran better at ultra with RTX off. The red bars show ray tracing with DLSS enabled. And while the performance was improved compared to the green bars, the game just looks blurry. I wouldn't want to use it. Metro Exodus was tested using the built-in benchmark, which seems to perform worse than actual gameplay, making this more of a synthetic test rather than representative of actual gameplay. This is only the second time I've tested this, and it was performing a couple of FPS ahead of another RTX 2060 laptop I recently tested, the Clevo P960 ED. Far Cry New Dawn was tested with the built-in benchmark as well, and again, second time I've tested this new game. Compared to the only other 2060 laptop I tested, it was just a few FPS behind, but a fair bit lower and 1% low. Far Cry 5 was also tested with the built-in benchmark, and the results were pretty good in terms of average FPS, but again, seems to be a bit lower for the 1% low results. Apex Legends was tested with either all settings at maximum or all settings at the lowest possible values, as there aren't really predefined setting presets in this game. Even with everything maxed out, it played well, around 90 FPS averages with 60 FPS 1% lows. However, results can change a bit based on where you are on the map. Fortnite was tested with the replay feature, and even with epic settings, I was able to average above 100 FPS. Not surprising, as it's a well-optimized game that runs well on basically any modern hardware. It was a similar deal with Overwatch, which was tested playing in the practice range. The lower settings were able to hit the 300 FPS frame cap, and even maxed out at epic settings, we're still getting 150 FPS with high 1% low results. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the built-in benchmark, and the results were quite good, just a little ahead of the other RTX 2060 laptop I've tested, with 100 FPS averages possible in this test at low settings or below. PUBG was tested using the replay feature, and the results were good for this test, although not much of a difference was seen between the varying setting level presets. Either way, over 100 FPS was achieved at ultra settings with my usual test run. CSGO was tested using the Electrical FPS benchmark, and with all settings maxed, this test was only just below 200 FPS averages, with up to 250 possible with all settings on minimum. Rainbow Six Siege was behaving a little strangely. The average frame rates were excellent. I've found this game to really benefit from the new NVIDIA Turing architecture. However, the 1% lows were quite behind, which isn't usually the case. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was another that was tested with the built-in benchmark, and was also another where I saw strange results. In this case, I noted that the CPU TDP would drop to 25 watts in this particular test, which seems to be why at low settings it's almost 30 FPS slower compared to the other RTX 2060 laptop I've covered. However, the Aorus 15 ends up being slightly faster at higher settings, which is likely what you'd be playing with anyway. Dota 2 was tested using a fairly intensive replay, so this should be a worst case scenario. These results are not the same as actually playing the game. I just use them as they can be exactly compared with my other tests. These are the results from actually playing a normal game in the middle lane, easily over 100 FPS even with ultra settings. Watch Dogs 2 also had some weird results, where high and very high settings were performing better than low and medium settings. Monitoring software showed that there was intermittent power limit throttling. This wasn't a one-off either. All my results are averages of multiple runs, but I also completely retested this a day later after a full system reboot and the results were consistent. My guess is that as lower settings are more CPU bound, if there was an issue with CPU throttling, it would become less problematic at higher settings. Weirdness aside, the game was still very playable for me even at Ultra. Ghost Recon is another demanding game and was tested using the built-in benchmark, and most laptops that I test aren't able to handle ultra settings in this game. However, very high settings was going well, above 70 FPS with 60 for the 1% low. The Witcher 3 was playing well even with ultra settings, averaging 90 FPS while the 1% low was still around the 60 FPS sweet spot. And of course, higher frame rates are achievable with lower settings. Doom was tested using Vulkan, and this game is pretty well optimized and generally runs well. Even with ultra settings, we're averaging well above 100 FPS, while the 1% low is around the 100 FPS mark, so it was playing very well with no problems. The i7-8750H CPU, RTX 2060 graphics, and dual-channel memory are giving us impressive results in most of the games tested, even at max settings. The Aorus 15 is also available with RTX 2070 graphics as well, so expect even better performance there. As noted, throughout the games tested, the 1% low results of some more CPU-demanding games seemed a bit lower than I expected. I'll investigate this more and possible throttling issues in an upcoming video where I look at temperatures, clock speeds, overclocking, and undervolting. So if you're new here, get subscribed for that one. So how do you guys think the Aorus 15 gaming laptop did in these games? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and get subscribed so you don't miss the full review of the Aorus 15 gaming laptop.